Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty Gritty with your host, Wolok. My partner in crime, Vasili Gianarakos, is not here for this one. I'll be honest with you guys, this week is a little bit of a mess for both of us. I got Jewish holiday stuff to work with. I had some other stuff that I was working on that kind of screwed up our schedule. So I pretty much blame myself. But Vasili, also on top of that, is moving this week. I believe he doesn't even have internet at the moment. So I just decided to hop on, put something together quickly just to make sure we get something out. Obviously, I've watched the games and everything. I'm up to date on everything, but wanted to make sure that, I had some content out for this week. So apologies for, it's going to be a little less structured of an episode as the ones that I do by myself typically are. But also, hopefully it's not shorter, but I'll try to go at least an hour here. But I think we have a good amount of stuff to talk about. But just wanted to make sure we got something out. I know people do listen to this regularly, and I humbly appreciate that. It's the coolest thing ever. I think back to, I've been doing this for like 8 years already. I think back to like 15 years ago or whatever. This would have been like a dream that I had people like listening to me talk about the Flyers on a regular basis. So it's really amazing. Even though maybe sometimes I come off as a little arrogant on here because I get frustrated with some opinions online. Just know that it comes from a complete place of humility, that anybody takes the time to listen to me on a regular basis. I just truly appreciate that. At first, it was completely surreal. Now, people like my tweets or pay attention to what I say or even attack me. I do kind of take a step back and go like, oh, well, at least, say if you don't have haters, you're not doing things right. So again, thank you everybody for listening. I guess I'll match that with, be awesome if, you could like, subscribe. Again, the audio versions on Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow there as well. Vasili and I both keep track of all of that stuff. And, obviously it makes our day when we get even one subscriber. So, or follower, rating, or anything. And I do read, even though I don't respond to all the comments, it's a little harder today than it was back in the day. I do read them all, so I appreciate everybody commenting and having conversations in the comments. Stuff is so awesome. Hopefully it continues to build and grow a larger community here. I still stand by the fact that if you listen to this podcast, you are going to be more informed than every other podcast. I do give credit to Charlie O'Connor. As far as like journalist side, Bill Meltzer is the gold standard, but Charlie O'Connor is an exceptional journalist. He's a very level-headed guy, so I do recommend their show as well. When Charlie's not on, it's a little tougher for me, but he is very smart. We've had him on here before, and he's not just informed, but me. It's about being level-headed. That's the whole point of this show. Is I come from a GM type of perspective. I'm not a general manager, but I definitely think like one. I've never really thought like a fan. You guys can see, those who have followed me for a while, I do not react to things. Most of the time when I see like YouTubers or anybody do that stuff, I kind of scoff at it because quite frankly, like after you're in the business world and you have professional experience and you see how decisions are made and you understand that there is a reason to why everybody is done, there are limitations to things. There is a value in patience. There is a value to not freaking out. And that has obviously been kind of the theme of the little bit that we've gone through here with the Flyers is that, no matter what has gone up and down, you have never seen me freak out about anything outside of the power play where I'm like, that's just unacceptable. We will talk about that today as well. But, everything else to me is it's an understandable route. Like even when a coach makes a decision that I don't agree with, I understand why he came to that conclusion. Maybe I don't think it was the right decision, or maybe I'll be like, yeah, I get it. I'm like 60-40 there with you, but I would have gone towards my 60, not towards your 40 where, we'll talk about the Alex bump scratching. I predicted that internally. I never vocalized it, but I was like, I have a feeling it's going to be Alex bump. But we're going to talk about that stuff today, and we're going to talk about the loss, how to kind of handle that, think about that. And then I'm gonna brainstorm about some other stuff that's kind of on my mind. Like Jamie and I were talking on the phone about the Flyers earlier. You get me talking, I can talk forever about this team. So before we get started, just to remind everybody about our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Make sure to check out Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim possible. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, SportsSpider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out SportsSpider.com. The link is in the description for both the audio and video version of this podcast. And also, always remember to check out FlyersNittyGritty.com and make sure to follow us all on our social media platforms. I am obviously at Wolok. Vasili is at Flyer It Up. I believe Jamie's just at Jamie Bascal. So, yeah, and obviously it's Flyer at Flyers Nitty with a K. Couldn't get the one with the N. Go figure. But yeah, definitely all the support there is really appreciated, and definitely make sure to check out our sponsors. What's crazy to me still when I do those sponsor readouts, because I've thought about like pre-recording them and just kind of clipping them in there. And when we have guests on, like I do that stuff separate just to not waste their time. But I still can't believe I can do that off the top of my head. I didn't think that. If people think I'm like reading while I'm doing that, I'm not. It's like it's in front of me, but I've gotten to the point where I just spit that sponsor stuff out like it's a Pledge of Allegiance or something, Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into Flyers talk. There's a lot to talk about. So obviously our last episode, in the midst of freaking out, typically of Vasili and I, we go on here and be like, hey, don't freak out. The dream is not over. And, I have very little patience for this, like up and down where we're seeing it today, right? Like everybody's all high on the Flyers. They lose a game. All of a sudden it's who can we pick as the next target? Who is the next problem? I'll tell you, look, you're free to do whatever you want as a fan. But I've talked about this a little bit. I talked about this a lot with Vasili behind the scenes. I've mentioned this before. I do follow the Toronto Maple Leafs on the side. They're drama and they have great hockey coverage, so it's like really easy because they'll talk about like the league and everything, but they're kind of out of their mind. Their collapse, in my opinion, was 100% predictable. I don't think it was caused by the fans. I don't think that that's the case. The fans do not cause collapses. They can chase players out of town, which is somewhat what happened with Mitch Marner, and the fact that the organization didn't come out and publicly defend him, which I think Brendan Shanahan would have done, but under Brad Treliving, Brendan Shanahan and Dubas would have done that, and Brad Treliving did not do that. I think Mitch Marner just kind of had enough, and I knew they were going to take a humongous step backwards because they were a team that was ran off top heavy, and this is something that not just Toronto is guilty of. We are guilty of it in Philadelphia too. We see a team struggling in some kind of facet or not meeting expectations, and our immediate thought is to attack the best player on the team. Or one of the best players on the team, whatever has been identified, and usually it's completely irrational. And we watched it with Jake Voracek. We saw it with Claude Giroux after Voracek was gone. We saw it the whole time. Like I had to argue with people that Claude Giroux was an elite hockey player, which is, he's one of the best hockey players of all time. And you have to like argue with people that he's elite. The guy's over a point a game or at least a point a game every year, Hart Trophy nominations. Like it's nonsense. But that's what happens. And now you can see, and this is what I said to Vasili. I said, first, they're going to get rid of one of the big three guys, and then they will subsequently get rid of the other ones. And you will see the media go after them. And that is what's happening in Toronto right now. And this is why I do what I do, because I know how destructive that is, how I don't think most media people have any idea what they're talking about. I think they are media people and they love drama and all that stuff, but most of it is nonsense. Like I don't think Toronto needs to trade Austin Matthews to reboot their team. I think they need to make. I think they need to take 1 year, which they probably should have done this year, and they didn't do a great job, which is why True Living is gone. But you need to kind of take a step back, regroup some assets, and make some smart moves. I think they made a lot of mistakes over the years, but they were generally like if they still had Mitch Marner on top of their players, they would have probably at least been a playoff team this year. Um, I don't fault them for going all in on a year where, quite frankly, they probably were good enough to make it to the finals. They just ran into the Florida Panthers, which were historically great last year and prior to that. And that's the attitude I'm trying to avoid here because we see that stuff here where like the attacks on other players are happening today. We see Cole Caulfield's success, we see Cutter Gautier's success, and it's just like this like bitterness, anger. And I don't believe that's majority of the fan base. I'll make it very clear. That's why I like argue with people online because I do feel like I'm kind of defending the rational middle ground, which I think most people, while they have quirks with the team, while there are certain things that make them unhappy about the team, understandably so, they're not even a playoff team. They're maybe close right now, but you cannot walk away looking at this team and have zero criticism. You're out of your goddamn mind if that's the case. So I try to avoid that stuff. So when we see the excitement and then a loss, like a disappointing loss, which it was a disappointing loss against the Washington Capitals, it is important to take a step back emotionally and not start to spiral, which is something we see mostly on Twitter and some on Facebook. Don't really see that out in public. Like I've talked to people about the Flyers, like they ask me questions, but nobody's freaking out. That typically is just like reserved for the internet. So I try not to let it like cloud how I think general Flyer fans are. I know what I'm looking at is kind of a shit show. So anyway, Flyers come up, big game, Porter Martone's debut, big deal. Quite frankly, if they won last night, all of the teams they needed to lose lost. So obviously there was no change in the standings, but it was clearly a humongous opportunity, and the Flyers fell short. Washington came after them physically and hard. Dan Vladar was not on his A game, so while like a lot of times maybe he would have stopped a few of those goals, I don't think he was as bad as his numbers indicated. Some of the goals were kind of like, okay, like the Ovechkin, he pops it falling forward. Like, come on. I don't know how Dan Vladar stops that one, but he obviously did not bring his A game. And a lot of guys didn't bring their A game, but there were like a lot of Bs, some A games, like Ristolainen played well, like Sanheim played well. I'll talk about Porter Martone specifically, but there were some good performances, but even like the fourth line didn't have their best game like they have been. Noah Cates was like good, but he wasn't like as noticeable as he has been. Really was the Konechny, Dvorak, Porter Martone line was probably the strongest throughout the game. Zegras had his moments, but Washington also really wanted this game. They don't want their playoff dreams to die. I think they got a little lucky. I don't think they also played a great game. I don't think they outplayed the Flyers. I'll be honest with you. I think the edge was kind of like in net, and I don't think Logan Thompson had like the best game, but he had a pretty good game. He outplayed Vladar a little bit, for sure. Even by the numbers and like the actual performance, and he's a good goalie. He's been a successful goalie, so it's not surprising that he had a good goal. It was a big game for them too, right? So they stay alive in their hopes. And obviously, a legend like Alexander Ovechkin, the guy's over a point. I keep hearing like, oh, he's over a point per game against the Flyers. He's over a point per game against every team in the league. He's ridiculous. He's been over a point per game for his entire career. What are the odds that he's not over a point per game versus an NHL team? That doesn't make any sense. Every year he's over a point per game. So obviously, like you do the math, every team he's playing is getting punished on a regular basis, on a point per game basis. So it was obviously a really tough game. I will say though, like if you have to at least be enjoying that these games really matter. We have not, even when Tortorella, and we had that good run and we made it to the very end, we had a little taste of that, but there was a collapse like right before that, it was like at the finish line, at least the Flyers, this was like a buildup. of like a little bit longer, like one of the best teams since the All-Star or since the Olympic break, and then to take that and now be like in it till the end. If you're going to miss the playoffs and you're a young team, yes, the Flyers are a young team with a slew of top prospects. You can ignore all of the nonsense haters online. Um, the reality is like again, I brought up that guy's video, Mike Bartner. He's younger than me, and he really lacks perspective. This kid, and there's a lot of YouTubers. I like his stuff. He's a good dude. This is not to attack him. He's also not the only one to say this stuff. They're essentially repeating their own nonsense to each other. If you look around the NHL, the Flyers are not even close to one of the teams stuck in mediocrity. They are a team that's by the numbers moving up, have a ridiculous amount of young talent throughout their organization and more coming. There are so many more teams that you could attack for being like, where is this team going? For one, being the Washington Capitals. What happens when Ovechkin leaves? The guy is still like their best goal scorer, and he's 40. Like, what do you guys think is going to happen? They're just going to rise to the top. They have some good young players, you know. They're not like a dumpster fire, but there's nothing on paper right now that shows the Washington Capitals are going to win a Stanley Cup within the next 5 years. Nothing at all. The Islanders got lucky with one player. Outside of that, they're a pretty middle of the road team. Though they do have some promise too. But again, I don't see how they're like substantially in a better position than the Flyers. Just Schaefer. That's it. And you got lucky. Great. I mean, they took advantage of that luck. They picked the right player. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but it's one player. The San Jose Sharks absolutely stink. They have some good young players, obviously with Misa and Celebrini is generational. You got really lucky. Like he's better than Bedard. Nobody thought he was even going to be generational when he was drafted. Everybody thought he'd be good, but you don't put up 100 points in your sophomore year. Like the last guy to do that is Connor McDavid, and maybe the kid will even be better than McDavid by the end, considering he's better defensively than McDavid. He's not as explosive offensively, but we'll see what he does. McDavid's still, in my opinion, the best player in the world, but astronomical performance by Celebrini. But outside of that, like, yeah, they have a bunch of top picks. Like people were screaming about Askarov. Like, okay, yeah, he's been fine. He's not like their savior in net or whatever. It's a lot of nonsense. Like Nashville Predators are in a lot of trouble. They have like a very old roster with not a lot of top players or young players in their organization. They're going almost nowhere. Yossi's like 36 years old. They're by far their leading goal scorer is 38 years old. There's just so many teams that I can name that are in worse position than the Flyers that are not like a playoff team. The Pittsburgh Penguins have rebuilt quickly, and Dubas is a skilled GM, but again, what happens when Malkin, Letang, and Crosby are out of the equation in a couple years? Maybe they'll be ready by then, but their lineup doesn't scream, Stanley Cup contender. But I do think what Dubas has done has been very impressive in this short amount of time. And if he continues to do, maybe they will turn around quicker. Chicago is still absolutely terrible. I love Bedard, and I love Frondell, and like they have definitely some young promise there, but they're far away from being highly competitive. I would say the same thing about the San Jose Sharks. Both teams added a slew of veterans trying to speed up the process. It has not really worked. I think it worked more for San Jose just because of how good Celebrini really is. Again, 100 points in his second year. It's insane. It just doesn't happen normally. It's like really Celebrini, McDavid, and Crosby. Like, I guess you can throw Ovechkin in there, okay, but we're talking about generational talents. Talking about goat level stuff. Even Bedard is not like that. So anyway, I'm ranting a little bit, but let's go back to the game. So the Flyers struggled in their game. They did show a lot of promise, a lot of fight. They came back twice in the game. Didn't have great success with the goaltending. They also gave up some like kind of ugly opportunities. They were not as on the ball as we've seen them. I do think the style that the Caps showed up, and I've heard other people say this. I agree with their statement. The style the Caps came in play probably threw the Flyers off in the beginning. They didn't have their best first period. It also wasn't terrible. I mean, they outshot Chicago more than double. So like, or not Chicago. I'm sorry, Capitals. Capitals did not have a great game. Like they kind of got lucky, in my opinion. But they made that luck happen for themselves, and their physicality definitely played a role into it. The Flyers ended up out hitting them substantially in the game, but the hits they had mattered. They were very impactful hits for what Washington came in to do. And I even saw like Owen Tippett, one led to a goal where he kind of put himself out of position throwing a hit, and it led to an odd man break the other way. I don't blame Tippett completely on the play, but it wasn't even necessary. And it was like they were trying to get back at that physical thing. This is why getting guys like Porter Martone and Tyson Forrester back in the lineup, why that matters. It's why it matters to have a guy like Ristolainen, because in the playoffs, the games are incredibly more physical. Down the stretch, the games are more physical. And like I love Denver Barkey. He punches above his weight class. This is not a knock on his overall potential. I think his potential is actually higher than people have stated prior to him coming in the NHL. I do see a top six forward, like legitimate in him. But this is where physicality is. It is a big deal. Size is a big deal. Strength is a big deal. It is. It is. I don't care who says it otherwise. It's just not true. Hockey is an incredibly physical sport. It matters on the back end. It matters on the front end. It matters everywhere. Can you compensate with other parts of your game? Absolutely. Typically, only the best players can do that. So if you're small and you're not that skilled, you're not playing in the NHL. And there's a reason for that, because strength really matters. Like if Emil Andre was 5 inches taller, it wouldn't be a question. And you saw like last night, he struggled with the physicality in the game. It's not his fault. He didn't do anything to be born 5'9". It just is what it is. Maybe he'll improve and get stronger over time, is what you hope with a guy like Andre. We'll see if he's still part of the equation, but. So the Flyers obviously changed up their lines. They sat Alex Bump in favor of Porter Martone. Again, I saw this coming. The reason I saw it coming is, one, Grunstrom outplayed Bump in the previous game. He did. Bump didn't have his best game, didn't have a terrible game or anything, right? He had a goal waved off. But, I look at it from Tockett's perspective. Like you already have this is exactly what he said in his pregame interview. And it's exactly what I said on Twitter. I said it before he said it publicly because it's obvious to me, right? You already have a young lineup. You're bringing a young kid in the line. You have, that would make 3 rookies on offense, not including Grabenkin, who's hurt right now. But you have 3 rookies potentially in the lineup, or do you go with a more veteran guy who's more consistent? You have a guy like Michkov who has had a bunch of turnovers this year. You want to put Martone and Michkov together, but I understand his logic. Like, I get it. He's like, okay, where can I put him in that if he makes a mistake, he's with 2 veterans, all of my, 3 of my 4 centers right now, or I guess you can say 4 of my 5 are defensively responsible centers. Outside of Zegras. So where can I put him in? Like, obviously skill-wise with Zegras would make sense just to play with him and Tippett. But then, he has no practice with the team. He wasn't allowed to be part of preseason because of the NCAA rules. So you're really just left with like, okay, where can I put him in where he doesn't understand our system that well? He's just riding on talent. And how do I minimize if he's not completely ready? Right? So that line of TK, who's one of your leaders, and Dvorak, who's been your number 1 center and is a two-way player. And TK, while he's not like amazing defensively, he is very aware. He just takes a lot of risks in his game, but he's very aware of what's going on in the ice. So it was a good idea. And again, instead of making Martone adjust again, you kind of ease it off and like put him on the right-hand side. TK, you're the pro. Put him on the left-hand side. I personally think he could have put Martone on the left-hand side. I think that's a little nitpicky. But, I trust the coach's judgment there, probably a little bit more than mine. But I think it made sense. And again, with Alex Bump also being a rookie, being pretty good, didn't have an amazing game where Grunstrom did outplay him the previous game. And it showed, like Grunstrom scored a goal, had a really good game. He was actually one of the main guys who played to his level. And again, puts him with Michkov. The reality is with veterans, even if they're not that good, they're consistent, right? So even if they're average or even below average, they're consistently below average. Where a young guy, he might be a really good player or above average player, but he's going to give you some below average performances because he's a young guy. His routine is not there. His understanding of the game is not there. His emotions sway a lot more than that of a veteran. So it makes sense to take out Alex Bump. From a excitement standpoint, it sucks. Obviously we want to see like all three young guys in the lineup together. That is probably something like if Martone was here all year, I think they would have been a lot more open to that than just doing it for one game. I imagine Bump will make his way back in and Grunstrom will make his way out or be Hathaway or something like that. Some combination of, veteran being sat. But these are crucial games. So I think Rick Tocchet actually handled it really well. And overall, let's talk about Porter Martone's, performance. So he had a good game. Obviously, the beginning was shaky. It's hard to gauge whether it's Martone being shaky or the team because the team was a little bit of a mess overall. So how do you just look at Martone, be like, oh, he didn't have much of an impact in the first half of the game. But it's like, yeah, but did you see the way the veterans and the people who've been there all year were playing early? They went down 2-0 in the first period. Like how do you look at the rookie and go, hey, you go out there and score a goal? So what was important is that as the game went on, as he adjusted, he obviously had a very good second half for a debut outside of like producing points. He played just under 17 minutes, 16 minutes, 54 seconds. I think it was like 3+ minutes of that on the power play. So obviously that really skewed his minutes. 5 shots on net, which led the team. I believe most of them probably came, if not all of them, came in the second half of the game. He had 1 hit, 1 giveaway, which, there's a few guys like Michkov has 4 credited giveaways in that game. Which again, like, I'll talk about Michkov in a second, but really strong, like second half. He did take a penalty in the game, but he was used. I imagine this is going to improve. Remember, no preseason for this kid with the Flyers. No understanding of the Flyers system outside of what he saw on TV and the phone calls that he had. I'm sure they tried to prepare him coming in here. But it's kind of hard. You got to be there in the practices, playing with the guys. They don't know what role he's going to play. They don't know how the coach is going to play him. So coming in, no preseason with the team, no practice with the team, just a couple skates. I thought generally pretty good. I did kind of expect him to score a goal in the later half. I was like, he's starting to feel it. He is that impact of a prospect though. Like it's not crazy to assume that this kid could come in and score a goal in his first game. We saw what Michkov was able to do when he entered the NHL. Like in the preseason, especially. Remember, he was over a point a game guy. Like immediately, that's what these guys are capable of doing. And I would say reserve your judgment on Martone, regardless of how he does, to next season. Here, we're just adding him as a boost to the roster. Next year, he will be a pivotal part of the roster, but it's hard to put him in that position. It's like you're putting him in a position to fail, and if he succeeds, great. So, like, know that he's in a position to fail. Like, and it's fine because the failure is only coming in the eyes of the public, not necessarily within the Flyers. They are not going to judge this short little run here. This is just give him some experience, set him into the offseason, have him come back, really ready to play an NHL season. So I thought it was a good performance. It was really exciting to see him on the ice. You watch these guys for like such a long time, and then you finally get it materializes on the ice, and it's like pretty exciting. It's dope. So it was cool that obviously the loss sucked. I thought maybe at the end they kind of had the ability. I kind of expected that late 5th goal there with the goalie pulled. I was like, let's just get a point. Even if we lose this game, if we just get that 1 point, it gives us that little bit of an edge that we need over the competition that we're at least neck and neck with. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Special teams again hurt the Flyers. They took bad penalties in the game, gave up a couple power play goals. The power play did not look good again. Shocking that adding Porter Martone, but you guys know my attitude. I've said it over and over again. I do not think it's an issue of personnel. I do not buy it. I'm sorry. I've seen the evidence. I've seen the points made. It's not there. You're not at the bottom of the league for 4 years in a row because of the talent. They have added substantial amounts of talent to this team over the past 4 years, and it's still at the bottom of the league. That is a problem of execution. It is a problem of the game plan, and I still think they pass way too much on the power play, which is a consequence of this team in general. Tocchet has talked about it. They give up shots and defer to somebody else way too often. I do think that will go away the more he hammers it in as a coach. We talked about it in the beginning of the season. It was not going to be overnight that Tocchet would get his system into this team. He might not have the most exciting offense, but defense, he obviously knows how to do that first. D first type of offense. I don't have a problem with that. It's less exciting, but as long as it leads to winning hockey games, it is starting to manifest more. Next year will be the real test if it actually picks up where it started, or where it's gotten to, and then kind of take off to be better, right? And that means the power play, okay, it scored some power play goals, nice. So it's not embarrassingly low again. It's still near embarrassing low again. No, it straight up is embarrassing. We're hovering around 15.5%. It sucks. It sucks. This is not 2000 anymore. 15% is terrible by today's standard. Top teams are doing 30%. Top teams used to do 20%. So the Flyers' just power play just stinks. It just is what it is. It stinks. Its execution stinks. The players don't stink. But when you see a lot of these point per game team, players out there in the NHL, they don't have this bad of a power play they're working off of. So it's crazy to see Travis Konechny as a point per game guy with the power play not being a non-factor completely. It means that if he was on a team with a power play team, he's over a point per game player. It's just our power play is that bad. It's really that bad. It's embarrassing. The penalty kill at least used to be good enough to compensate for the lack of the power play, and now it's hovering towards the bottom 1/3, or at least middle of the road. It's kind of hovering around middle of the road from anywhere from 12 to 20, depending on the recent stretch, and that sucks too. We need a stronger penalty kill. It needs to be consistently, around 12 at least. And considering we had same level of talent, and we were top 3, top 5 in the league, and I don't know. Some of this stuff just confuses me why it drops off, but I really think that it hurt the Flyers. And then again, Dan Vladar not being able to make a couple big saves that he needed to make also hurt the Flyers, kind of took them out of it. There's still an opportunity here to make the playoffs. It is not over. I think this is actually going to the wire, guys. Even if the Flyers get a lead, the other teams are still involved. So just expect that we're in it till the end of the season. That's it. Every game is going to be tense, but that's cool. That's what playoff hockey is like, right? Playoff hockey is amazing, but it's extremely tense. If your team goes down 1-0 in the series, every game you're dreading every goal against you, right? You don't want to get kicked out. You want to win. We all want to be able to check that box. They made the playoffs, right? It's at least hey, things are heading in the right direction. But know that even if they just miss it, it's essentially very similar. They're in the conversation at the end of the year. It's not as good, obviously, and it doesn't give the actual playoff experience, which is the real miss there for the players to experience it, and obviously for the financial benefit and for the fans to feel that joy of knowing, hey, we're in the upper half of the league, right? But you are actually, just the West is so bad this year that it makes the East, the East is so much stronger than the West. The West, outside of the top teams, stinks. And it'll change next year. It won't be the same again. But, they're just not good. They're just nowhere near as good as the East. It's just we're in a much tougher situation than teams on the West. But I don't know. I'm not as sad, I'm not hanging my head. I see now there's hate on Cam York because he made one bad pass. We really have to stop this. Like, did people not realize that like they're doing this, and then the guy starts playing well, and then they have to like pivot their target to the next person that they think they hate, and like none of it ends up being true because they can't take a step back and look like an overall large sample size. Like people are gonna freak out over Michkov and like Dan Knightley, who I like the guy. He's a good dude, but like I saw him complaining about Michkov like being slow, and it's like, dude, we know he came out of shape. Like, why are we harping about this? This is, well, what's the point of this? You know he didn't come at into camp in shape. So like, what are we talking about? He's a kid. That just wait to see what happens next season. They're not trading him. It's like, okay, you can be tired of it. Okay, fine. Okay. What does that help you? I remember when my father was alive, we used to talk about the Flyers a lot. My dad was a lot more impatient than I was, and again, understandably so. But I remember talking to him about like Sean Couturier and Braden Shen in the beginning, and even when I was young, and this was obviously a while ago. My dad was like, they just don't have it, and I was like, Dad, they're young. I was like, they do have it. I was like, just give it time. And then within like a few years later, Sean Couturier is like the number one player on the Flyers. Braden Shen's winning a Stanley Cup, captain of St. Louis. It's like, you have to let things play out. And that is like a lot of times that's the position a GM is in, is that he knows that it's uncomfortable. His job is to be stoic about the decision, calculated, stoic, and unemotional. Right. So at that point where you're like, oh my God, like get rid of that guy, he needs to go a little bit longer than you know, or he needs to create solid opportunities that don't devalue his assets, which is what a big mistake that Toronto Maple Leafs made, is they allowed teams to devalue their assets, which is something Danny Briere does not allow, and it's part of the reason I think he's a great GM. He has standards, high ones, and they're accurate too. I don't listen to people online about the value of Ristolainen. I don't give a shit what people on Twitter say about the value of Ristolainen. Most people do not predict a single trade. They go, oh, like the Robert Thomas. Oh, we're gonna give up Owen Tippett, Jet Luchenko, our Toronto's first round pick, and Oliver Bonk for a guy who's a point per game player, not a franchise player. We're throwing the kitchen sink at a guy who's a really good player, but he's essentially Travis Konechny in the middle. I love Konechny. I don't think any team would give us an Owen Tippett, a comparable player, and 3 first-round picks for Travis Konechny. Like, I don't know where this stuff comes from. I think it just comes from a position of desperation. GMs cannot behave this way. So I do want to talk about Alex Bump because he took a seat, and I've been thinking, he's good. He's really good. He's NHL ready. His ceiling is like, I actually think it's actually a little lower than Denver Barkey's, and I didn't think that initially, but he seems like optimal middle six guy who has like second line upside, but like he does seem like that 20 goal, 50 point mold all the way. 20, maybe even 25 goals type of guy. We'll see. Obviously, everything's a range, right? The guy could end up being like a 10 goal scorer in the end, right? He's still really young, but he does have some really good qualities to him. And I was trying to think about who his comparison was, and I was like, oh, it's like, reminds me of like Alex Killorn, and obviously his heyday, he's now with the Ducks, but it reminded me of when he was with like Tampa Bay. Again, he was like that 20, 25 goal scorer, good at defense, physical in the corners. He's about the same size as Alex, and obviously they have the same name, which is also funny. But both of them have about the same size. They both have NCAA careers, both similar numbers, and then the NHL production for Killorn is about a 50-point player in the NHL. And I was like thinking about that, comparison. And typically players like that, they take a little longer to season, but when they do hit, they hit and they stay in the league for a long time, like Killorn, right? And they're pretty consistent. Like they know their role. They're like a third or second line player on a team, depending on, line combinations, and they're like popping in what they do every year. Like Matt Reed's another example of that, who came into the NHL later and he was like a 40 to 60 point player every year, right? 20 goals, defensively responsible. That's how I kind of see Alex Bump. Like he's a different type of player, but he's that caliber of player. So while he did sit, I think considering the way the Flyers played, it might be hard to take Grundstrom out. Maybe it's Hathaway that sits, or Glendening. I have a feeling that it could be Hathaway, and Bump comes in and maybe plays on the fourth or third line. I do think they should probably put, give Bump an opportunity, maybe switch up something else, or maybe just goes with the same lineup again. It's hard to watch Bump out of the lineup because we all like him and we see the upside, but let's be realistic about where the Flyers are right now. They are fighting for a playoff spot. People want to hate on Rick Tocchet. The reality is the some of the stuff we've seen is ballsier and more resilient than what we saw under Tortorella. So, like, we can hate on Tocchet, we can disagree with him, but he has done some good stuff here. It's not everything he's done is good. He's made some blunders, especially like the speaking out in the media stuff. He made some mistakes there. And, time will tell on Michkov if Michkov can recover. I do have questions about, like, when this team is truly ready to compete. Is he the coach, right? Is he going to hold them back a little too much offensively, where, like, at a certain point where they all know their roles, they're pretty sound in their foundation, their positioning, their responses to plays, their discipline. When all that stuff, when he does put all that in, is he the guy to unleash the team the way like a Joel Quenneville will or Laviolette will? Time will tell, right? But there is value to having these rigid guys help you build the foundation in which you can compete on a regular basis before you can out talent teams. And I do want to talk about this because I hear this thrown around so much. There is no team in the league that can win on talent alone. Not a single one. I hear it all the time, and it's just not true. First of all, the bare minimum for the NHL is competency. This is the best players in the world, with the best coaches in the world, with the best training staffs in the world. It just is. So the bare minimum is already exceptional. It's just in comparison to the other exceptionalism, right? We're talking about the 1% of the 1% of hockey players in the world. So it's easy to talk down on them, when you compare them to one another, like this team stinks, but the reality that team stinks beats every other team in the world, right? Like San Jose Sharks against any KHL team would just wipe the floor with them, like, or AHL team. Like in a full-on competition, they are much better. But there is no team that can win just off their talent. Like they can win to a point, like just disorganized chaos, and we'll just run and gun, and I have McKinnon and McCarr, and I'll just outscore you, or I have Kucherov and Braden Point and Brandon Hagel and Gensel, and we'll just score a bunch of goals until we outscore you. But again, there are a certain amount of teams that have kind of equal level of talent. So like, how are they supposed to beat their opposition? Discipline, process. And the reason I bring this up is McDavid talked about this the other day when they lost to Tampa Bay. And they talked about how, he's like, that team just, he was like essentially just saying how the team's a well-oiled machine. Everybody knows what they're doing, what they're supposed to be, where they're supposed to be. There was a team that had a tremendous amount of health issues this year and excelled, like didn't just do well, dominated the NHL, losing players. Again, that's the difference maker in the NHL. That's what will help you stay competitive. If you want to win a championship, you need both. Right? That's the idea. You need both. You can't just have the attention to detail and the details of, every intricate play and, the discipline and you need everything to be a really good team. That's without a doubt. And to win a Stanley Cup, you need an entire good team. That's just the reality. Like all the players have to be good in your lineup. Both goalies, everything. That's what you're looking at most of the time when you see these teams in the finals. But most of those teams are also playing pretty well foundationally. The team that can do both wins the Stanley Cup typically. So we want to build that foundation for the Flyers, which I believe they have been doing since Tortorella. You can see we're seeing some of those fruits today with Sanheim and Drysdale, right? And the improvements of certain players. And all of a sudden you're seeing them, they can adjust quickly and come back in games and all of a sudden go on runs. It's a long, arduous, annoying goddamn process, but the Flyers are doing a pretty good job of getting there. So I think we need to slow down with the hate on players and talk it and all that. I still believe so much in this upcoming offseason, even if it doesn't have that explosive big trade. There's so much that's been building to 2026 with Martone and Michkov here, then Luchenko coming into the mix. Nesbitt maybe is even going to be an AHL guy, though realistically, he probably should go to the NCAA, would be really good for him. Or just staying in the OHL and seeing if he can dominate that league. We have Bjarnason, Zavragin, we have Bonk down in the minors. Now Juracek, who's a point per game down there. There's so much culminating together that the rest of the league is not aware of. The Flyers fans, the ones online, are so bitter and angry about the suffering that they've been through, because we have suffered, that they're not seeing the forest through the trees anymore. They're just seeing red. And I don't see that stuff. I have seen this process played out. Is it going to work? I don't know for sure, but there clearly are very good signs they're heading. Again, I didn't even name Spencer Gill, right? And I know Carter Miko didn't do that well, but he's building slowly over time. Hopefully he comes on second wave, right? And then we have, Jack Murtagh down there, and Ruhonen, and Jack Berglund. We have so many guys entering this mix. It's easy to go oh, well, where's my Celebrini? Celebrini alone does not win you a cup. Full good teams win you a cup. The reality is you can identify several players on the Flyers that could be stars to superstars. You can identify several players throughout the organization that could be, we're still missing a couple pieces potentially, but hopefully we can make that transition. And that's what happens when you have a luxury of a lot of assets, So just something to think about. I know it's a more positive view. I get why there's skepticism towards that happening. People expect look at all the prospects and they're all high stats. I'll tell you, I've learned over the years, I've followed prospects really deeply. A lot of these stats in the lower levels, they really don't mean anywhere near as much as you guys think they do. That's why I have no patience for these analytic charts. The ones where here's his comparison versus those things are almost useless. I'll be honest with you, they're practically useless. What matters is what happens when he gets into the program at the NHL level, what adjustments he can make, what kind of work ethic is behind it, what kind of fitness does he get into, right? How does he grow his game? When I see Jet Luchenko not scoring, I'm okay, we're going to fix this, dude. You're going to recognize who you are. First of all, he's an incredibly talented player, right? So, I don't care what Craig Button said or anything. Craig Button is so wrong on prospects on a regular basis. It's I really like him. And from a GM standpoint, when he talks about his experience of being a general manager, I love it. I actually am a fan of Craig Button, but I have learned already to not really listen to anybody on prospects, to trust my own instinct, to look at the players when I can get to see them and go off of that, because the scouting reports, they're outdated so quickly, and they come from guys that they themselves miss, and it's a really hard thing to predict. So I'd rather just wait till the guy is actually semi-adult, get here, take a look at him, and see what I think we have in him, right? And we have no control anyway. So we should just be rooting for these guys to succeed, because we have no control over what happens after the Flyers make. We don't have control anyway across the process. So we just have to hope they make the right decision. That's really what it is. And if they don't, somebody will get fired. We've seen it over and over again. Philly is not scared to fire people. I don't know if people have noticed. It's not like you get to stay here for long periods of time with lack of success. Look at what Vegas just did. They brought in Tortorella, right, with 8 games left in the season. You think the Flyers wouldn't have done that, especially in the past? Are you kidding me? Charlie O'Connor says we're the chaos organization. In a lot of ways, he's right. Chaos city, chaos organization. All right, just want to remind everyone to please like and subscribe, hit the notification button for notification, get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes and give us a rating and a follow if you can as well. Really, really appreciate it if you guys could do that stuff. Again, humbly if you made it this far. Second half, I'm just going to go through the lineup a little bit, and I also want to talk about a little bit of Phantoms news. It is important to recognize that Carson Bjarnason was just demoted to the Reading Royals. His game has definitely dropped off in the second half of the season. He started off really strong, where he was outplaying Kolosov, and of late he just hasn't had it, and the Phantoms have not had it. So I imagine this is maybe even just an opportunity to help him like avoid, um, like getting his confidence destroyed, because the Phantoms have not played well. Like they have not. Like Kolosov's numbers are not amazing either, but they're definitely better than Bjarnason's at this point. He's definitely been the better of the two in the second half of the season. So they called up Yaniv Peretz. He's going to be the backup, at least temporarily. Again, doesn't mean that he's like a failure of a prospect or anything like that. It's just, he came in really strong, was playing really well, and then Phantoms have just kind of fallen apart. I mean, quite frankly, the best news out of there right now is that David Juracek is a point per game player. 2 goals, 8 assists in 10 games. Very impressive. So that's a good sign. I do not expect him to get called up at all, by the way, this year. I know people keep like hinting that it could happen. I really don't understand why. The goal, and Danny Briere said this himself, is to rebuild his foundation. They're not going to be able to keep him in the minors at all next year. He's not waiver exempt, and nobody is going to pass. Like, he's not passing through waivers without getting taken. So they're going to take the entire time here to rebuild his game, get his confidence up, give him an off-season plan, and he's starting on the Flyers next year, right? So they're not going to rush that. I cannot see Juracek playing. I can maybe see Bonk, who's been with the team longer, getting a call up at the end of the season. But I don't think that's going to happen either, to be honest with you, because they already have 7 defensemen. And I get the sense that they have not completely given up on Andre. I think every time I see the fan base or even media say, I think the Flyers are done with this guy, I go, maybe. Again, if you look at Danny Briere's history specifically, he's been more patient with guys than like, especially GMs of the past, like somebody like Holmgren, who was a good GM, but was very aggressive and very shrewd, like almost to a fault, where it hurt him in the second half. He had such a strong first half of his GM tenureship, and then the second half, it started hurting him. I think Danny is almost as aggressive, almost as shrewd, but has like a little bit more of a sensibility. I personally think, again, maybe I'm being over positive about Danny Briere. He could completely drop the ball in the future, but as of right now, I think he's the best GM I've seen the Flyers have in the modern era. From just the way he's operated, the way he's cleaned things up, the way he's filled the system in. Like, people talk about like some of the other teams, oh, they have 8 picks. It's like, okay, the Flyers had this for like past 3 years. He completely rebuilt their development program in the time he's been here. Completely. The players are completely different and a better quality. Literally, the people running that development department are completely different. Their ability to change players, bring them back out. They were not that team prior to Danny coming here. Like, Risto doesn't come here and revive his game, right? Like, Drysdale, it wouldn't have really worked out with him. That was kind of what was happening prior. Now it's the opposite. We're the team. We're like, yeah. You're with that org. No, you come here. We'll straighten things out for you. We'll get you back in the NHL. You're going to be a better player after you play for the Philadelphia Flyers. That's the organization you want to be. That players want to come here because they saw what happened with Drysdale, with Ristolainen, with David Juracek, with Dan Vladar. These people, they had some problems with their career. They came to the Flyers. They excelled. We bring it out of you. That is what I want to see a GM be able to do. On a surface level, that's what you want to see him to do. I take in assets after they come to me. They're worth more than when they came to me. That's what I want to see. And that's why I also don't think Toronto should trade Austin Matthews, because I brought this up already. You do not trade an asset when it's at its peak low value. Like right now, somebody could come in and you're not going to get enough for Austin Matthews to actually be worth trading him. Let him come back healthy. Let him play. Let him at least hopefully have a 40-goal season. Then you can go get the assets you really want. Then a team will be desperate. He's healthy. He's performing. Now you got to pay me. That is the idea. Not, hey, oh my God, I'm feeling pressure. What do I do? My team's not performing. Oh my God, I need to make a trade. That is the worst way to run any organization. That is the only GM I can think of that was legitimately a horrible GM. What was his name? Oh my God, the Islanders GM, Mike Milbury, who was a media guy. That guy, I don't know him as a person. I imagine he's probably a decent dude. He was a horrendous general manager. If you want to think about a fan being a general manager, it's Mike Milbury. He traded Zdeno Chara, gave up on him. Drafted DiPietro first overall because he needed a goaltender. I think he did. He has like a countless record of horrendous decisions that were all just him being impatient, him ignoring what his staff was saying, and just went off the hip. Like the way he was as a general manager, and he's the worst general manager of all time. Like by far, at least in the modern era. He was horrendous. Horrendous. He destroyed the Islanders in a few years. Just left them in the worst position ever. Like, never be Mike Milbury. And he talked a lot of shit on his media stuff too. That guy does not know what he's talking about. All right, let me end with some roster analysis, and we'll talk about some players and whatnot in the process. So let's look at the lines. We'll talk about next game. All right. So this is where our lineup currently sits based off of last game. Porter Martone, Dvorak, Konechny. I would say that is the top line, just based off minutes played. Denver Barkey with Trevor Zegras, Owen Tippett. I have Martone's salary wrong here. I'm just noticing that now. He makes under $1 million. I can't believe it that he didn't get max. Maybe the new max for ELC is a 9.75, but I saw Riley Thompson got over that. So I was a little surprised. Maybe that number was agreed upon a while ago and they just signed. They probably had that contract ready to go, right? And what does he care? He's getting paid the full amount anyway. It's two-way, but he's not going to be playing in the minors at all. Denver Barkey is still playing with Zegras and Tippett. Alex Bump is not. Sorry, I forgot to update this because here I am thinking that we're going to see what we wanted to see. So it was Carl Grundstrom with Noah Cates, Matvei Michkov, Sean Couturier on the left still with Glenn Denning and Hathaway. Last night was their first. They weren't bad, but they weren't as effective. They were still physical. They were effective in the physical department, Couturier especially. I think maybe Hathaway might be a little beat up because he had a monster performance the other night from like a physicality standpoint. I think he had 10 hits, which tied his career high. So maybe he's the one who gets the night off just because maybe physically he might be more beat up than he's letting on. So maybe he's the guy who comes out of the lineup. And Bump has the ability to play the right side also. So maybe they try Alex Bump on the fourth line. Or they move what we want to see, right, is moving Carl Grundstrom down to the fourth line and move Alex Bump to play with Cates and Michkov, which I think is the right move to do, but we'll see what Tocchet. I can understand. I saw some people complaining about changing up the lineup. Look, normally I do agree with people, and actually I have these backwards. Normally I do agree with people that you don't want to make changes after your team's playing really well. But like you're adding a superstar prospect to the team and replacing another rookie with him. You essentially changed one line. I guess Grundstrom was like in and out of different lines. So like can make the case that you change the top line, I guess. I think, but I also understand why he didn't want to put Porter Martone with Michkov. Is Michkov is like, he's not playing the best. Michkov, the reality is that Michkov was never going to get caught up in the beginning of the season. I understand that my view on Michkov, like if you really look at it, his ceiling is still sky high to me. I still see a 100-point player in him. I do not care that people are like, again, people panic about everything, media-wise. when you cover the whole league, you don't give grace to anything. You don't give a shit, right? You just analyze what's in front of you. You have 32 teams. You're either good, you're bad, whatever. We go through the nuances here, and the reality is that the talent is still immense, right? But if you do not come into camp in peak physical condition, you will not catch up all season long. You will have a down year. And even his down year is what Ryan Leonard is doing this year in his not down year. Like, think about that. Him and Leonard's numbers are like identical, and people are like, Ryan Leonard's amazing. Michkov, oh my God. Like, Michkov's bad year is still an average NHL season. It's bad. It's bad. He's been playing bad at times this year. He was, I think he had 7 points in the last 7 games, and nobody's even talking about it, right? Like, the expectations are sky high for him. He cannot come in not in. He has to make up for last offseason now. He has to be in the best shape of his life. He looks slower because he didn't come into shape, and that is a big deal. He came in heavy. He came in not strong enough. Like, I see a worse player than last year. That is conditioning, not talent. But he knows. I believe he's going to rectify it. I really do. I think he's done everything that's been asked of him since. I think he acknowledged. And one thing I thought of is somebody who's lost his father. It's easy to forget that he was so young. It's only, I think it's probably been 2 years, maybe 2.5 years since his father passed away. You're a young man. His dad was behind his career. I do wonder if, like, not that he was like, doing the worst thing ever or whatever, but there is some chaos in your life when you don't have a father and you're a young man. I mean, statistics definitely point to that, regardless of your income level, your race, and there's impacts on both genders. I'm not trying to get political or anything, but it's an obvious big part. Having both parents is incredibly important in the life of, like, anybody, right? But, like, a son who's, like, guided by his father. I wonder if, like, maybe his dad was the one kind of pushing him to stay in shape and all that stuff. And then his dad's not around to kind of push him a little bit more. Now he's got to do it himself, right? And he's a really young guy, without a father. I do wonder if some of that played into this. Like, first summer is like a big NHL star. All of a sudden, he has more money he's ever had in his life. He's a millionaire everywhere he can go. He can go party and blah, blah, blah. If he's in Russia or whatever, people are like, oh, Mishkov, NHL, like, you know what I mean? Like, what would happen just to distract you from, like, being disciplined? So, like, this year, let's call it a wake-up call for a guy who maybe needed it, and it's up to him now to pivot in the right direction. So I'm still, like, I still see Michkov and Poor Martone superstar talents. Zegras, I think, is entering that conversation once again. I think Denver Barkey is a top 6 potential forward. He's already kind of playing around with that. He's way ahead of schedule. Like, nobody's talking, like, he should not be here with the Flyers. He should be in the minors. But he's just been so damn good. Like, but his production's not that high because he's here way too early. Like, I can't imagine when this kid actually gets stronger and better. He's going to be much better than Bobby Brink, in my opinion, who I liked. But I just see a higher ceiling for Denver Barkey. I see a really good player in Alex Bump. I think Gurbankin can be a really good fourth-line player. I don't know if he'll be here long term, but obviously he'll get back in the mix. He's obviously injured currently. I think Sean Couturier will step into the fourth line C role for the future. Like, I think there's some really good stuff here. We'll see how they adjust the lineup. I think this is okay for right now, but I do think they'll want to get Bump in the lineup because he was playing really well too. He had, like, one mediocre game, but before that he was playing well in every game. So they are a better team with him in the lineup. I do wonder if maybe Hathaway sits, Grundstrom rotates to the fourth line, and Alex Bump makes his way to Noah Cates and Michkov line, because Bump is pretty good defensively as well. He's not as physically strong as Grundstrom because he's younger, but I think he probably will get there, maybe even next year. So next year's lineup is going to be a whole new conversation. We'll kick that down the road. Sanheim and Risto have been just like the backbone of the defense right now. I think York and Drysdale struggled a little bit in the more physical game. It's why I don't love that both of them are paired together. Like, I almost would like to see Drysdale with Sanheim, Risto with York. I'm surprised they haven't gone to that at all here. But at this point, it's probably not going to change. And I do, I guess, depending on opponent, I do think Juleson will probably get into a game here pretty soon, especially if it's a more physical game. I think Tockett's like instinct about the physical, more physical games. It has hurt Andre somewhat, but I think it hurt Drysdale and York too. And he's a little smaller than both of them, so and less talented than both. Um, and yeah, so Dan Vladar, I suspect will not start next game, but the following, I think Erson, who's man, we got to talk about Erson's what to do with him in the offseason. I'll be honest with you guys, I think he's earned a 1 year extension. People might not like that, but with the UFA market the way it is, I didn't look. I'm not a goalie expert. I didn't think Dan Vladar was going to be a great goalie when he came here. Um, I think though they really there. I think like almost part of me goes like, man, maybe did they just like keep Erson, bring in a third goalie that's like maybe a little younger than Erson, and have him replace Kolosov in the minors to duo with Bjarnason and see if that guy can be the new number three, or maybe they bank on Kolosov getting better because he's still pretty young too. Um, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. You almost like wonder like how could they not go out and get more help? But the way Erson's looked, it's like he's hitting. This is something Vasili and I brought up a while ago. He's hitting that 27-year-old mark, which is the mark where goaltenders specifically break out. And it doesn't mean Erson's going to break out and be like a best goalie in the league. But if his breakout is a really good backup in the NHL, well, that's good enough for what we need right now. That's what we're looking for. So why go to the UFA market if you think you already have the guy in house? He's been exceptional since the Olympic break, playing sparingly, but that would be his role in the future, right? Theoretically. And again, with Zavragin and Bjarnason, I suspect they're going to draft a goaltender this offseason. But if I were them, I would look for another goalie anyway in UFA and see if you can go three goalies in the minors. You never know, man. Goalies are weird. Like you can find them in weird places. So if there's anybody who piques their interest, even though he's not like a guarantee, I think they should revisit it anyway. And maybe they won't bring Erson back, but I think the way he's played so far, again, there's still 8 games left here. Let's see how he finishes out. But he is making a strong argument that he at least deserves consideration for a bridge, like a 1 year deal. Be like, this is like the last year we're really going to give him. He's an RFA. We can get him for real cheap. Probably give him like million and a half. You're not going to get paid much, but maybe even just like 1,200 or 1.2 million, right? The same amount that you can bury in the minors. If you're not good enough, the third guy or whoever we brought in, he takes your spot. But, we're banking on you. We're hoping that you can come in and have a great season from the beginning of the year. We will see. We will see. Because next year, there's a lot of changes coming. We'll do a separate episode on that, but there's a lot of changes coming with the Flyers. And also, like, Forrester, Tocchet did have a slip up. He's like, when he comes back, I don't know. I was talking to Jamie about it earlier. Like, I don't think that they're rushing him back, but there is a world where he comes back like in 2 or 3, comes like into the lineup. Especially the Flyers are really close because he's dying to get back, and Tocchet wants him back. It's just, do you want to risk his health? Because he got hurt on his own. He didn't get hurt from a check. So I don't know. They have to kind of figure that out. On one hand, like, yeah, I want Forrester back so bad. He's so good. On the other hand, it's like, for me, it's still about next year, and I don't want to risk him. But I'm also not an expert, in medicine or something like that, right? So I do hope that the doctors, team trainers know what they're talking about with this scenario. So if he is coming back, at least he's wearing non-contact. They're testing it out now, obviously. But it also, could be good to, like, even if the Flyers are out, let him play a couple games, get his beak wet again. But they had that opportunity with Couturier, I remember, and they just shut him down for the year, and he was pissed. And they were just like, hey, no, take the year, come back next year. Like, we don't want to risk it anymore, right? There is wisdom in that. So while Tocchet says he wants him back, again, Briere has been the voice of reason through all of this the entire time. He's done a fantastic job of being the voice of reason. He's walked in like Daddy Danny several times and be like, hey, look, Mechkov's not being traded. Nothing's going on. Everybody relax. That might be a situation here with Forrester. It's like, look, obviously we'd love to have him back in the lineup, but I'm just not going to risk it. I want the kid back, but I want him here for next year. We have a lot more stuff to do. I want him to come back. He'll play in some, summer tournaments. Just take the full time to get right. Come back. But then again, he did get injured in the summer tournament. Something to think about. Okay. Phantoms have been sucking. It's really disappointing. They might not make the playoffs in the end. Cole Knuble, however, has been elevated. He had his first assist the other night. Really nice assist. He's playing right now with Peterson and Oscar Eklund as of last game. Boris Kachuk got demoted to the fourth line, gets a hat trick, has a monster game. He's playing with Riley Thompson, who had his first point off a face-off. He's playing, it's a bad sign with like two college free, like not top picks come in and are on the top lines of your Phantoms team. That's how much they've had trouble scoring. Carson Dorwart's been shifted to the left to play with Gauthier and Richard. Again, on paper, that should be a badass line. It just is not manifested. Tucker Robertson's playing with Wisdom and Noah Powell. Golder, I think, was sent back to the ECHL. I'm not 100%. Brett Harrison was a scratch in the last game. Same with Sawyer Bolton. I don't think Cernik is with the team. Jed is obviously not with the team. And Devin Kaplan is out for the remainder of the year. Adam Yinning is playing with David Juracek instead of Granz. Again, Juracek's kind of performed with everybody so far. The team's still not performing that well, but that's a big, strong pairing. But I get it. Yinning is more of like pure defensive defenseman playing with Juracek. I assume that's the thought there. Hunter McDonald and Bonk. Bonk has been steadily improving all year round. He's like systematically putting up points. I really want to see what he's like hitting the ground running. I don't think he'll be on the Flyers to start next year. I think he's like in-season call-up because I think David Juracek takes priority. But I guess it depends. If Risto's not here, what the Flyers are going to do. There's a lot of changes probably coming still this offseason. And then Kyrou has played mostly, I don't know, maybe he got injured because Jackson Edwards was in for him. Kyrou and Granz were out of the lineup, and Gannett was playing the third pairing. And again, goaltending, Kolosov and Peretz. Spencer Gill is in the playoffs, but I imagine he might join the Phantoms too at the end of the year because he already has his ELC. And we know they're very high on Spencer Gill, but he's in the playoffs right now in the queue. And Ty Murchison's still out for the year. All right. I'm going to call it on that. I've gone for a while here. And I have dinner soon, so I probably have to get off here, get this up on the internet to share with all of you. Really appreciate everybody for listening. I'm still very excited about the remainder of the season here. It's going to be a nail biter till the very end, most likely. But I'm in. Whatever. Let's take the emotional roller coaster. And then a big off season upcoming, regardless of where we draft. It's a big off season, which is what's even cooler about it, where it's not just baked off of like, oh my God, like we need to get a number 7 pick versus a number 6 pick or versus a number 9 pick because this guy is available. That is not the biggest highlight of this off season. The highlight now is what do we do moving forward. It's gonna be interesting. I'm seeing the transition. Just because other people don't see it, I don't know what to tell you. I've talked about it for a few years already. I'm seeing it happen. Everything that I've seen manifest, I'm seeing the game plan play out. They're on track. They're on track for what I was hoping for. Again, just a reminder, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notification, get notified when we release these episodes. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes, give us a rating and a follow if you can. Again, the best way to support our podcast. So if you haven't done that so far, you made it this far, really appreciate it if you could do those things, especially the ratings, the likes, the subscriptions, all that stuff is like so awesome. So please take the time to do that if you have not done it so far. And also a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Shout out to Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. It will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim possible. Again, Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also shout out to sportspider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate content from all over the internet. Articles, videos, podcasts, everything like that. Kind of like a Bleacher Report, but better. Because Bleacher Report kind of sucks now. So again, sportspider.com. And again, always make sure to check out Flyers, nittygritty.com. We appreciate all of you. We'll be back more normal schedule next week. Probably working around whatever games are next week. And Vasili will be back with me. He should have internet by then. Okay, so we love you guys. Thank you so much. And remember, always stay